Thank you. And yes, I have to speak in English. But today I found myself in much agreement here with several things from Mark and Didier. And in the future, I think our technology must become, all of our technology must become Viridian in some way. But to think about how to approach our theme today, I was gravitating toward two problems. The first is that we have to acknowledge some differences between post-humanism and transhumanism. And then we can move forward on the second problem, which is to work out the idea of what post-human rights can be, or human rights in light of post-humanism. So first is this relationship between transhumanism and post-humanism. And transhumanists have sometimes used the term post-human as if it were a noun invented to describe what happens after the humans have transitioned from a current pre-singularity state. And by singularity, we'll come back later, but this is the idea, of this moment of crisis or maybe a eucatastrophe in which we're transformed with our technology into some unimaginable state, and we can't see past the singularity. And some cartoon version of this could be that we have quantum computing brain interfaces, we have psychedelic nootropic drug drips, and we meet up in augmented and virtual reality. So voila, there's the post-human. But of course, post-humanism has its own parallel life, apart from as a lens to see this version of the world after we surpass limits as humans. It may also be a way to see past the limits of humanism. Post-humanism asks us to think about the world as if we are not at its center. Post-humanism always takes me back to actor network theory. As a young student at Kiel University in the 90s, I was really enamored with the idea of networks and that our interactions with social networks could cause individual dissociation. And that these networks, of course, are social. And, it's founded somewhat or related to chaos theory and the idea of extreme dependence on initial conditions, holography, etc. Something like these ideas, we have this idea of a social network in which everything we interact with, including the material world and non-human persons, are in a network of social activity, the actor network. So anyway, I think for too many transhumanists, the idea of a post-human is something like an ambitious humanist billionaire astronaut, but these ideas leave out the Uber driver from rural Mississippi or the coal miner in Balochistan. So to look at the second problem, which is, yes, it's complex, we have to think about the matter of new rights for post-humans, or to think, what are the new rights and how are we to think of post-humans and their relationships to humans, their relationships to transitioning transhumans, to animals, to intelligent machines, and to the wholly alien, which could even include the extraterrestrial or our gods and spirits through animism. But I want to propose a shift in our terms as an experiment that I hope may help us frame useful questions about post-human rights. So let's try talking about post-humanism as post-personism for a moment. We might think about this as a post-individual selfism. This is the post-human as post-singular, but not post-techno-social singularity. It's post-humanism as a concern with the plural rather than the singular experience. So what new rights could or should we recognize in a post-singular person world? Such a world is one in which we cease to have a place in the center of things, and our primary values are not in the experiences of the individual. Humanism was a move to save us from brutal hierarchies in which corporate entities, the crown, the church, were the locations of and the selectors of our primary values. In a post-human, post-singular person world, we wouldn't want to move back to any such state. So this isn't about ceding our individual human rights or trying to make future conceptions of rights fit into corporate molds, but instead about asking how individual rights exist in networks and in relationships, in pluralities that are contextual. So a post-human right is one in which the primary value of any right is located in these contexts and networks and relationships. These rights emerge from relationships and live less in universals than in specific domains. A person may have rights to do things, one, to be, two, and to have property. So being, doing, and having rights. But we know that my pet cat doesn't have the right to run for mayor, and I don't have the right to vote in Normandy. I may have rights to the contents of my wallet, but not to your purse. So the framing of human or personhood rights as contextual is not absolute. If I become a citizen of France, I have new rights or new responsibilities. I may be able to use the universal medical system, but of course I cannot do so from here in Texas. So even though these are contextual and specific, the temporal dimension must be acknowledged when we think of post-human rights in context of their networks. Okay, so transhumanism, it seems to me to rely on an old humanist and enlightenment worldview of steady linear progress, a technological and social progress that builds on the past. And we've heard about techno-libertarian and techno-progressive movements. These are streams in which there may be more or less social welfare. I find that in American transhumanism, the stream of sort of techno-libertarianism, which is maybe an analog to European liberalism, is connected to the idea that this rising tide lifts all boats. And when enough of us have advanced technologies and transform, everyone will be better off whether or not we have the social safety nets, which, you know, I have grave doubts about. So politics aside, for libertarians, progressives, and others, transhumanism is still an enlightenment child in a sense, but with a strange glitch, with this techno-social singularity, the point in which we all accelerate so quickly into something we cannot yet imagine, a post-human world. In this convergence of artificial intelligence, virtual and augmented realities, nanotechnology, advanced materials, biohacking, there comes a general uplift reminiscent of Teilhard de Chardin's noosphere. Everything that rises must converge. So in transhumanism's sort of linear and stepwise, what I see as stepwise progress as a heuristic, we arrive still at a moment of boil and sublimation in which everything changes. And there's a post-human reality in which the human and the dolphin play together and go explore the farthest reaches of the galaxy and psychic bliss or something like that, which could be heavenly and it could be hellish. The boundaries dissolve. The boundaries of an individual dissolves, never mind the boundaries of species, which I think can be an exciting thing to think about. I'm not entirely opposed to it. Anyway, even if transhumanism starts with older ideologies, its deliverable, its punchline, gets us to a realm similar to that suggested by actor network theory and other post-human movements, which is the dissolution of these boundaries between self and other, and the necessity of asking, what is the human except for her networks? And where do her rights issue from, if not from her networks? The post-human rights will be rights of relationships in specific domains, context, ecosystems, but this also applies to our situation today. Even as we think with what post-humanism may mean for us now and in the future, what if we begin to think of ourselves and our rights as deriving from our pluralities? And I wonder if this may indicate an end to this inherited phase of individual human rights we live in now. In what way may we say that you do not have rights? That is it the case that I do not have rights, but only that we have rights together in relationship, and in relationship with our networked worlds embedded in nature in meshworks of technologies. So transhuman, I finish now, transhumanism has dared us to think about our human rights in light of advanced technologies and how that will transform us, equitable access to those technologies for human beings in its best version, for as many people as we can gather into the shelter of transhumanism. But post-humanism may dare us to move our emphasis away from individual rights and instead emphasize our interdependent and intercontextual responsibilities to each other, and also to the oceans, to the forests, and to other species that continue to enable our very existence. Merci beaucoup.